Neck-throughs, guitars, they're like a guy that you won't have a beer with you.
I want to hear what's pushing the notes.
Freddie King and B.B. King, Albert King, and let's not forget Burger King.
I don't want to blow my knuckle out.
Stainless steel is the work of the devil.
These go to 11.
From the East Amplification Tone Labs in Baltimore, Maryland, it's the Amps and Axes Show. With your hosts, Jeff the Godfather of Low Wattage Amps Bober and Mick Marcelino.
Well, good day to you, Mr. Bober.
Good day to you, Mr. Marcelino. How are you, man?
Oh, phew, man, we got a good one today. That's for sure.
Yeah, we do.
And we are gearing up. So I want to put it out there. I want everybody to listen. If you're going to NAMM, we're going to be there, and we're going to be crawling all over that place. So if you see us and you know who we are, you come up, shake our hands. We will shake them back. We'll Purell the hell out of them, though, because
absolutely
we know the disease that we're going to get when we leave, and not just because of you, just because of 500 handshakes.
Don't put it out there, my brother. Don't put it out there.
I know. It's,
I've been good all winter, and I plan on returning in good shape.
Pneumonia.
Too many gigs coming up. Too many gigs coming up.
That's right. And you know what has been happening? I've been checking the numbers, and man, this new FCC regulation, boy, it kind of flipped me a little bit, but now I'm seeing a rise in our numbers, and it tells me that you guys out there are definitely bringing it, and we can't, thank you very much for that.
That's right. And we couldn't do it without you and your brothers and your cousins and aunts and uncles and neighbors. And anybody else you can turn us on to, turn them on to us, however that works.
That's right.
Spread the word. Spread the word, man.
And when you do, we like to think that we're capturing a lot of stuff that, most interviewers, they ask the same questions. We don't do that. So please tell them that you heard it here first. That's right.
Because, we try to ask the questions that are going to get a response that most people probably haven't heard before. And sometimes we bring you people that you haven't heard before, and then you go check them out and you go, oh, this guy's cool. So I think that's going to be the case again today. We're going to take a pause for the cause, and we're going to come back with the guitarist for the new Blackfoot that's out there, the new Blackfoot band, put together by one of the original guys from Blackfoot. So we're going to be back after a pause with the guitarist for Blackfoot, Mr. Tim Rossi. Okay, and we are back with our guest of the week because we like coming back with the guest of the week. And as we mentioned, it's from Blackfoot, Mr. Tim Rossi. Tim, how are you?
Good. How you doing, man? Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Ah, well, it's great to have you, man. I'm sure there's a bit of a story involved in how you finally wound up in Blackfoot, but I'm going to do what I do with all our guests, and we're going to jump in the Wayback Machine and take a ride back and find out where Mr. Tim Rossi was born and raised and what got you into this wild, wacky, wonderful music world. So give us some history, man.
All right, cool. I'll I don't want to bore the listeners too much. I'll try and keep it short and sweet, but basically I started out, my family's originally from Boston, the North End, and I started playing guitar about around 12, and probably like everybody else out there that's listening, I was just playing because I loved it, and I played around New England until basically I got out of high school, and then from high school I went right out to LA and started playing out there, kind of the same thing, just paying like everybody else out there, paying our dues and playing and doing everything you can, and
let me ask you, when you started playing at that age, was there a particular band that got you into it? Like somebody you saw or heard and went, that's what I want to do?
I think all the classic bands that I think, that probably inspired everybody, just the stuff that, all the greats. Of course, Aerosmith, in Boston is, that's the coolest thing there is. So, you look at those guys and you go, man, who doesn't look at Joe Perry and go, like, that's the coolest, So,
For sure.
So stuff like that. Of course, like, same thing, like Extreme, guys like that. Like, a lot of the local guys, in the Boston area, it's guys like that you go, hey, they did it, why can't I? I can pick up a guitar and go, And so it was probably, stuff like that. And then everything else, all the other bands that are out in popular culture or whatever you want to call it, just it all seemed appealing to me, I was just like, guitar, you just, as soon as you kind of like muckle onto it, you know how it is, you just go, man, this is cool.
Oh, for sure. And the only reason I asked is because over the years that we've been doing this, we kind of find that there was like a generational line. There were two bands that seemed to have influenced a generation and then another generation. And the first one, of course, for the older guys was the Beatles. That's where a lot of people, when they saw them on Ed Sullivan, it's like, that's what I want to do. And then fast forward to the next generation. And we've heard this so many times that, the first time I heard it was surprising. But we've heard it so many times now. It's like the next generation, their Beatles was Kiss.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like when that generation saw Kiss, they went, that's what I want to do. So that's why I asked. It's just so crazy. It's like, was it one of those two yet again, kind of thing.
And I apologize. I just kind of came into this because I had some things I was doing. I was off mic.
Aerosmith.
Yes. So the piece though is that I hear your accent. So you're from up north. Is it Boston? Is that where you're from?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So here's a bit of trivia, and let's see if he knows, Jeff, because not too many people know this. I was a huge. We've interviewed Pat. God, what was his last name? Oh, God. Okay, so we interviewed the bass player from Extreme, Pat.
From Extreme.
Oh, Pat Badger.
Pat Badger. Jesus,
there you go.
It's called dementia, kids, and wait until you get it. We interviewed Pat Badger, and I never asked him this, but I remember seeing Gary Sharon's brother's band. And it was called Atunga. Did you ever see those cats, man, up there?
No, I didn't. And I knew that those guys had brothers though that played in bands, so I had kind of heard of that. I think Gary and Nuno both had brothers maybe that played, you know?
So here's the story though. And this is the whole tie to the Boston thing, but it was cool. So Gary's brother was the singer of this band. It was basically a lot like Extreme, right? So they had this hot guitar player who I don't even know what his name was, but there's a billion hot guitar players. And I remember he had these giant hoop earrings in, right? So you may know where this is going. It got caught on the horn of the Strat, and he went down, and the head was going up, and that was not a pretty sight as that thing came out of his ear.
Wow. That'll wake you
up. Good Lord.
I mean, I think everybody in that place was just like, we want to leave now because the guy is in excruciating pain.
My goodness. Yeah, and that's when you just look away and maybe I've got to go to the bathroom now. I feel bad for this guy.
It's like, he messed up like 5 bars of the song and nobody gave him any crap over it.
You think? Wow, somebody pry the guitar from my ear and I'll be good now. Jesus.
Good Lord. Yeah, because you hear some of those crazy stories. Like, you guys have probably heard that one, like, Paul Gilbert tells that one about how, like, he caught his hair in the drill. Yeah. I mean, That's got to be pretty epic, you know.
And the best part of that story was he says he goes over to the side of the stage, right, because this hair is in the drill. So one of the roadies gets the idea, hey, just reverse the drill. So it goes out and comes right back to his head.
Oh, my God.
I mean, that's got to be, you know.
Good idea on paper. Good idea on
roll,
paper,
baby.
You know? It's rock and roll. Holy shit.
You know, that's when you just need your mom to come out with a pair of scissors. All right, let me just cut that clip, you know.
Told you shouldn't have long hair.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, my God. All right, so where the hell were we? We got to the point where you were, you had gone to L.A. Like, were you were playing, I guess, with some local bands first in the Boston area, I would imagine.
Yeah, like that was like, but that was like just kind of like, that was like sort of kid band. So I wasn't really, you know, I was, you know, because that was still like junior high school. So I didn't, you know, we were kind of playing like, you know, like house parties and frat parties and stuff like that. And I never really, you know, because basically right out of high school I just took off. So I didn't really get to play the scene, so to speak, in you know, in that area, you know, and really that only started to come when I went to L.A., you know. So when I went out to L.A. is when I kind of started playing all the, you know, the usual suspects, you know what I mean? Gotcha. All the clubs, the cool ones, the ones everyone knows, and then all the ones that no one really knows about, you know, unless you live in Southern California and stuff. But kind of doing the same thing, like, you know, sort of just doing what everyone else is doing, just out there playing and paying your dues and, you know, learning the hard way, which is the best way kind of to learn, you know.
Sure. Did you have any reason to go out there? Any connections that you're going to hook up with when you got there, or you just decided, I'm going to go out there and see what happens?
Yeah, that was it. I just went out dry. I just like you know, I was always like, you know, LA is the place to go because it's like, it's warm and it's cool and like, you know, there's a bunch of musicians out there, you know, the business is out there. It's kind of like, you know how it is. It's like a lot of times it's, you go, you know, you're a kid and you're going, all right, there's New York and then there's LA, and you're going like, I'm already freezing my butt off up here. Like, I don't need to go to New York, you know? So, you know, so to me, LA was like, that just seemed like, you know, this has got to be the best, you know. So it was like boom, right to LA, and then that's, you know, that was sort of it. But I didn't know one person when I went there. It was I think about it now, you got to be pretty driven to just be like, I'm just going to LA all by myself, and I'm just going to figure it out when I get there, you know. And that's basically what happened. But it's, you know how it is. It's just like playing guitar and all that stuff, you know, you just get into something and you get driven and you're not really thinking about the odds or the obstacles. You're just like going, I'm just going forward. So let's do this, you know, and that's sort of how it was, you know.
Well, I mean, no better time to do it than when you're young, you know. There's no sense in waiting 20 years and then go, well, I think I'm going to go out there and give it a try, you know.
Exactly, you know. It's like, you know, it's better like when you don't know any better, you know, like, you know, you're just like, you're not thinking about all the, you know, what could go wrong, you know. You're just going, I don't care, I'm just going for it, you know, and that's kind of how it was, you know, and so I just, you know, went out there and kind of did the what everyone else does. You go out and you play and you do the whole thing, and I mean, really, my story kind of gets interesting is when I take off from there, which is funny. I mean, a lot of stuff happened in LA, which is really cool, and I met tons of great guys, and but really things got, for me anyways, when I look back, I go, things got interesting actually once I moved to Florida. So, you know, and that's what sort of led me into the whole Blackfoot thing, you know. So, you know, basically I moved to Florida, and that was like 2008. It was kind of interesting actually, because it was almost sort of like life was sort of setting me up for what was going to happen. But it was like I came to Florida, and like right away I just started playing with a local band. I just want to get out and play, and I wasn't really at that point. I just thought, I'm going to Southwest Florida. I'm sure there's not much going on. I'm not expecting really anything to happen, but I just want to play. You know what I mean? Keep my hands moving and my stage legs going, and so I just started playing, and just hooked up with a local band, and like right away they're like, okay, man, you're in Florida now, so you got to start playing some Southern rock. And I'm like, cool, I love Southern rock, sign me up, let's do it,
What were you playing out in L.A.? Was it the typical kind of glam thing? And were you playing with any bands that we know, or any people that we know that went on to move on, with a large band from L.A.?
Well, I mean, of course, in L.A. you cross paths with a lot of guys,
Sure.
that are doing a lot of stuff. So, but mostly I was like, it was sort of, I was sort of doing a weird kind of, it was sort of like metal and punk and ska. It was like all these different weird things that were going on, and and so really, I mean, I guess for the most part, like, the guys that I played with, some of them are doing other things and stuff now, and nothing mega huge. I mean, I wish I could say I would, played with, some of these mega gods or something, but all amazing musicians in their own right and doing some great things now, coming up, and but it was more sort of, but I will say that, at that point, it was more, because, I mean, you guys know a lot of the LA dudes, there's so many great players there. So the level is really high. So there's a lot of, there's a lot of focus on chops and technique and being on top of that stuff. And, which was perfect. I mean, for me, I was, I just was a maniac about playing, and so that was a good environment for me. So my playing was sort of like, the people that know me from LA kind of know me more as kind of a chops guy, and so when I started doing Southern rock stuff, some of them were scratching their head, what's going on? Like, and I'm like, of course, in my mind, I'm going like, that's the basis for all that kind of stuff anyways, that rootsy, stuff. For me, is sort of the basis of a lot of that, and there's, we have the great shredders of Southern rock, Ricky Medlock included, of course, but so, that was kind of the scene that was, for me, like, it was more chops kind of oriented stuff that I was doing when I was in LA, and, so when I came here, it was sort of a shift, you got these guys saying, all right, we got to play Southern rock. And you go, cool, I'm just embracing it. And after moving to Florida, I mean, shortly after, I started playing in this band, and we're doing Southern rock, all the usual suspects, learning all the, the Skinner, the Molly Hatchet, the Blackfoot, of course, 38 Special, all this great stuff, and then very quickly after, I had, the opportunity to audition for Jimmy Van Zandt. And that's sort of where things, that was another kind of big turn there, because, I started playing Southern rock. I'm getting into it with these guys locally. Then all of a sudden I hook up with Jimmy Van Zandt, and then that's like kind of the next stage. So I was sort of set up to kind of play with him, because I'd already been getting into this whole Southern rock thing, which I was loving. I mean, it's guitar music, so it's really, it's great stuff to play, it's definitely not, like, oh geez, you're going, man, this is just great solos and great, all the rhythms. I mean, everything about it is just super cool,
Yeah, I mean,
and
I like it because it's still very much, well, it is. It's 100% musical in the sense of it's not, Yngwie Malmsteen, right?
Right. So it's not technique. It's It's rock.
Yeah, and I mean, if you want to look at a song like that's just like crazy killer clean, even cleanish guitar, you would look at like "I Know a Little" by Leonard Skinner.
Exactly.
That guy
Perfect example.
is just burning to no end, and it's but it's not in a neoclassical way, and it's got all the chicken picking thing going on, and it's just a whole. You know, I think a lot of times too, and you know, we're getting ready to go to NAMM. When you walk in there, it's sweep picking hell. It's 2-hand, 8 fingers, 20 strings, and
right.
you know, and it's like the norm now. It's like becoming like this new standard. This metal thing is kind of like it just keeps going more strings, lower, and just these crazy passages that almost sound like machine-like. But there's something about, like Greg Kalk and these chicken pickers, like, Guthrie Govan, who does a lot of that. It's like they are some of the most technical players, like walking, but they're not doing these, high gain, crazy, 7-string sweep picking things. So I guess that there's a lot of guys that kind of dismiss them.
They're not mechanical players either.
No,
they're technical, but they're not mechanical.
Yeah,
they got a lot of soul in there.
Yeah, they're beating the hell out of the guitar. They're choking the notes out of it, and it's like it's such a weird world. These two worlds, they don't even come near each other, like colliding. But the skill level is still insanely high on both sides.
Yeah,
I just think that the Southern rock thing just comes across more musical, in my opinion. I mean, granted, there's a whole slew of kids out there that like all that craziness, but the Southern rock thing just stays so true to roots to me. Because you got bands like Blackberry Smoke now, and they're brand new per se. They've been out since
relatively, yeah.
But it's like, you listen to those cats, man, and that is like Allman Brothers next level without all the jamming in between. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's still got that thing that I love, because it's like rock and roll.
And Southern rock, I mean, I always love 3 guitars, no waiting, just
yeah.
12 strings all going. 18 strings. 18 strings all going,
Yeah, man.
Yeah, exactly. It's almost like it's the content, of what's being played. Like, there's a lot of technique, like you said, on both sides of those schools, but the content of what's actually being played and the vocabulary, like, that's what I was finding. That was, when I was sort of, because I was always into that stuff, and my playing was always sort of blues based, but it was kind of, more of an advanced, I guess. It was more chops oriented, like that kind of stuff you're talking about, but it was still rock, It's kind of like, you got guys like, Yngwie, and he's very classical, that is so, he's steeped in that. And then you got guys like Paul Gilbert, like, who touches on that, but you can just tell when you listen to him, he's really just a rock player,
Oh, absolutely.
So he's got a lot of those kind of, those roots and those qualities, even though he touches on different things, and but it's kind of, I just found, like, when I was sort of transitioning, I'm going, oh, okay, you're starting to see there's a vocabulary, and there's certain things that make that southern thing happen when you play, and it's so the basis of some of it is the same stuff, but it's how you're doing it and what you're doing to it. It's kind of like jazz. Like, you even look at jazz, and all music, classical jazz, it's all based on the same kind of harmony and theory stuff, but it's like what you're doing to it and how you're manipulating the scales and playing into notes and and stuff like that. And that was kind of what I kind of found out about Southern rock, as I was really getting into it, and you start really, getting the microscope on what's going on and stuff. And like you said, stuff like I Know a Little and things like that, like, just phenomenal, you going, man, that's some tough stuff to play, and it's funny because that's the kind of stuff, like we did that song actually with Jimmy Van Zandt, and it was like, I'm sitting there learning that going, good Lord, I mean, like,
there's a lot of picking going on here.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a lot of it's sophisticated is maybe the word, it's not, it's not just some guy like blazing up and down just a straight pentatonic scale, which is great too. I mean, there's nothing, it's all good as far as I'm concerned. I don't care how sophisticated whatever stuff is, as long as it is the energy and the feel and you're connecting with people, it's all good. But the content of that stuff is pretty sophisticated, and you're going, man, there's some interesting stuff going on. And that was the kind of stuff that I was figuring out as I was sort of going from, more of that crazy kind of style to, the Southern thing. And, but that was what was cool, is it was like all that was kind of setting me up. I started learning Southern rock, and then I joined Jimmy Van Zandt's band. Jimmy is the cousin of, Ronnie and Johnny and Donnie. And so he's, unfortunately, Jimmy passed in 2016 of cancer, but God rest his soul. But, I learned so much from the guy, and like that was like part of my Southern rock college, and that set me up for Blackfoot, and that was kind of the interesting thing. Like, to me, I look back and I go, it's kind of funny how I kind of got set up in a real nice way for these things to happen. And, so I'm sort of blessed in that way, Well,
and then, of course, I've been thinking about it since you said it. And honestly, man, if you really think about it, you were set up from when you were a kid. I mean, listening to early Joe and Brad, that's not too far removed either.
No.
Yeah, it's true. You're right. And then, of course, like I said, I mean, you got guys, there was guys like, Nuno Betancourt and guys like that playing around that were just these mega technical players. And I definitely, I've always been a fan of like all the guitar heroes, I used to love, Dimebag and, all these guys, those are a lot of the guys that are like guitar heroes when you're coming up and you look at them and you go, man, like Dimebag Darrell, he's the coolest dude, but you look both ways,
Yeah.
You look back and you go, well, there was Dimebag, and then there was, and he was into Randy and Van Halen, and Van Halen was into Clapton, and, and you kind of go every which way, and you just look at all the greats, and you go, they're all so cool in their own way. And I'm just one of those guys, like, I just loved guitar so much, like, and in particular, electric guitar. It's like, I was one of those dudes that, like, if my guitar was, like, sitting, like, leaning against the couch and, like, a dog walked by and his tail hit the strings and it made a sound, I was like, that's cool, And, you know what I mean? Like, you just, like, that was awesome. How do I do that? It's like, and, so you got all these different players. And so I kind of, and then you get into these guys and you look at what they're into, and then you find these, of course, a lot of these great obscure guys that a lot of them everyone knows, but, guys like us know it, I guess. You know what I mean? Us guitar guys, we know guys, these maniacs that, the normal public doesn't necessarily know, but it's like,
like Guthrie Govan.
There's this like perfect example.
Yeah.
Like the guy is like, he's like a god, I mean, he's just amazing. He's the coolest dude, and, but people have no clue. They know the Kardashians, but they don't know Guthrie, So it's
well, we figured it out. Me and Jeff figured it out probably about 100 episodes ago that there was actually a spaceship somewhere that landed. And he got off, let's see, Michael Badio got off, and then Rusty Cooley, he got off of it too.
Exactly.
It's just this entire, like, genre of guys that are like not even, they're like almost like subhuman or something. Like they've just taken this thing and just
superhuman.
Yeah, they literally just gone, okay, well, if this guy plays 250 notes a minute, I'm going to do 500, and then does it, you know, and then does it in such a way that it's not like just garbage. It's actually
not sterile.
Yeah. You know, it's actually got something there behind it, and you have to at some point you just kind of put your hands up in the air and go, look, I'm just going to go figure out.
Right.
Sweet
I don't have that DNA, you know. I don't have that DNA.
Yeah.
It's not in there.
Yeah, it's just, you know, but it's amazing that, like, some of these, you know, like some of these guys, like, as technical as they can be, like, they can just be so emotionally connected to what they're doing, and, like, so you're listening to it, and then they can just kind of, like, play all ends of the spectrum, and you just go, you know, like, he can just get funky and bluesy, and he can do all that stuff and play, like, really just slow killer phrasing stuff, and you just, like, it's just still just so moving, you know. You go, wow, you know, and guys like them are so cool. They're just so inspirational.
Well, that's you know, that's Nuno Bettencourt. Nuno Bettencourt is, you know, I mean, in the guitar world, he's very respected that way. But it's kind of like that household name thing. He's not really, you know, they just never got to that point, even though More Than Words was their big, you know, that was their big connection to, you know, the population. But it just didn't, you know, their later albums didn't carry like that. But if you listen to all that stuff, he's not just blazing. That dude is one of the funkiest players. And then he gets...
he's funky, he's soulful.
Yeah, he gets bluesy, and then he's doing stuff on piano, and these, like, really long kind of like ballad, but they're not ballads. They're kind of like, you know, these nice pieces and stuff. And you're going, where did this guy come from? You know, it was just like he was
Boston,
this hot guitar player out of Boston.
That's right, Boston.
And then all of a sudden it was just like this huge explosion for them. And then it just went away as fast as it came up. You know, it was, it was crazy.
Well,
you know,
I want to,
it's nuts.
Yeah, I want to talk to Tim a little bit about gear, but first I want to go. I want to find out, like, you know, you were in the Van Zandt band and everything, and that kind of primed you. But how did the Blackfoot Connection happen for you?
That now it's getting interesting, you know, because at least to me, anyway. But what happened basically was, you know, I was in. When I came to Florida, I came to Southwest Florida, and as it turns out, that's where Ricky Medlock and his longtime manager and producer Al Nally are based. Now, at the time, I didn't realize that. I just started playing, and then I hooked up with Jimmy Van Zandt. That was all completely separate, even though there's that connection. You know, Ricky plays with Johnny Van Zandt. You know, that was Jimmy's cousin, but there was no connection at that point with any of that stuff, even though the dots were sort of connected. But so what happened was basically, you know, I was still kind of, when I was home, I would still play around town and locally, just kind of the same thing. Like, I just want to be playing even if I'm not out on the road or whatever. And that's basically how I got on Ricky and Al's radar. Was I was playing around town, and basically Al Nally came in where I was playing one night, and then that's really how the connection happened. I started working with Al and Ricky. They sort of started mentoring me. At that point, I was just writing and singing. It was sort of just like a rock, contemporary blues, you know, kind of thing, I think, at that point, you know, and writing songs, and, you know, I'm learning from them. And then sort of in the midst of that is when they had the idea to do this all new Blackfoot thing. Yeah. And I guess, you know, I appeared to be a prime candidate. So when they had the idea, you know, they told me about it and said, this is what we're thinking. And I'm going, that sounds pretty innovative and cool to me, you know. I mean, because it was a pretty radical idea, you know, to go, I'm just going to, like, completely stick a new lineup of guys into this, you know, classic band And, so some people, might have been like, oh, I don't know, but to me, I went, man, that makes, like, I just got it, So as he explained it to me, I went, I know exactly what you're trying to do. I'm like, that's really cool. No one's really done it quite before like that. So I thought this is to be in on something innovative like that, let alone just the honor of someone saying, hey, do you want to be in Blackfoot? I mean, one of these legendary Southern bands,
Yeah, man. When you moved down to Florida, you started playing all that stuff. So they probably saw that in your playing to some degree, I would imagine, because it doesn't go away.
Yeah, that's what I think too. Exactly. That at that point it was pretty ingrained in me. So they're sitting there going like, all right, this guy fits the bill. So,
and he's even got the accent.
Yeah, that was the funny thing, It's like, they're like, what? I
don't. He's got that native Boston American accent,
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Christ Almighty, he can't be any further north.
Right?
Exactly.
Do you remember what club you were playing in when was it Al saw you?
It was, it was one of these, it's actually a place, I think it was a place, it's right on the beach. It's like one of these beach clubs, like.
Were you in Fort Myers?
Fort Myers. Yeah, Fort Myers Beach, yeah, there's like a little slew of like little clubs and little, bars and stuff that everyone plays in, and it was, I believe it was a place called Jimmy B's, I think, actually.
Any
that
chicken
ended up
wire
getting torn
near
down.
that stage?
Oh, yeah.
Any chicken wire near that stage, by any chance?
Yeah, you're pretty close. You're pretty close, you're ducking stuff, on the daily,
You gotta play rawhide.
Crazy people having a good old time.
You gotta play rawhide at least once a night.
Yeah, exactly. Just kick into rawhide and then you're okay. For like 3 minutes.
Buy him a beer. So now let's get into a little bit of gear. Like over the years, what has your arsenal looked like? Like when you left Boston for LA, did you were you taking a guitar and amp with you, or you took nothing, or just a guitar? And how did your gear progress from there?
Well, when I took off, actually, I just brought one guitar, and that was it. I didn't bring anything else. It was just like a little suitcase and a guitar. And the guitar was actually a guitar that a friend of mine had put together. So it was just kind of like a spare parts guitar, but the neck was actually a Fender neck, which was really kind of cool, but the body was like some replacement body, and he had just put this guitar together, and it was sort of like I was taking off, and he was like, man, I want you to have this guitar and like take it out there, and so I took that guitar because I was like, all right, cool, here we go, let's do this, you know what I mean? And then that was, that was actually, I used that like for quite a while, up until, so I used that around LA for quite a while. And then strangely enough, it was like, I got an ESP and, it was a crazy story. It was like some guy like went crazy and smashed my guitar that my friend gave to me.
God.
And he was like, but he had drunken craze, and like, but he was this guy with a lot of money. So like, he basically gave me $5,000 and said like, here, just buy any guitar you want.
Wow.
So I was like, it was just crazy. It was just this, one of those LA stories. This crazy stuff goes on, and so I had all this money, so I could buy anything I wanted. So I played all these guitars around town, and then I just ended up playing this ESP that was just played really killer to me. So I just ended up like, all right, I bought the ESP, and then I used that for quite a while longer. And then I had a little bout with Ibanez. Like I was playing out there, and I kind of got endorsed with Ibanez. I kind of like had some mutual friends and stuff, and then like they gave me a couple of guitars, and I played those for a while. And then, strangely enough, shortly before I left LA, the guys in ESP, the guy at the time, Alan Steelgrave, was the AR guy for ESP, and I kind of hooked up with ESP, and that kind of started this relationship that I still have with those guys. I mean, there's still, they've gone through a few guys. Alan's left, and different guys have come in and out, but they've always been super great and super supportive of me, and so really ever since I kind of sort of towards the end of LA and then coming out here, I just had been playing all ESP stuff, like ESP LTDs, and like I just love those guitars. Like, I always say to them, like, man, if you guys like kick me out and then lock the door and never let me out, I'll still be playing these guitars forever because I love them, And
it's like George Lynch, he's a big endorser of ESP.
George, yeah.
Has been for Christ forever.
Yeah.
And I'm going to throw another obscure name at you guys, and hopefully we're going to have him on the show soon. Is another guy that landed in the spaceship is Andy James. Andy James is an English metal guy that is just brutal. I've never seen the guy play the same lick twice. And he does all of his stuff on LTDs, which is the Korean line of the ESPs. And I tell you, look, ESP, I think out of all the Japanese companies, they have the biggest custom line. Because Ibanez doesn't even have that. I mean, they do an artist line, but you can't Jeff, you can't go online on Ibanez and go, I want this, and they'll give you a price, and then you go to your dealer and they get it for you. Mm-hmm. But ESP does, and you can go, you can get, if you have your own graphics, say you want to put like your amp. And you want to put the name of your amp company on your guitar, they would you upload the art to them, and they'll have somebody
that's pretty cool.
Paint that on there. I mean, it is that fully customizable. Now correct me if I'm wrong, Tim, because you know more than I do on this. They're not out of the same factory that the Ibanez the high end, the Prestige line. Are they out of that same factory? Do you know? Do they share that line?
Like ESP and Ibanez, are you referring to? Or?
Yeah, for all the high end handmade ESP stuff, because there's only a couple of those factories in Japan.
Right, a lot of companies share a few companies.
Yeah, there's a lot of.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. As far as I know, like the ESP, like all the actual like ESP, stuff. Yeah, that they have a facility in Japan. Okay. And there's supposedly, from what I've heard, anyways, it's like there's basically just like it's supposed to be like maybe like 20 guys in there that just are making everything, you know.
That sounds just like Ibanez's deal. So I'm wondering if they just kind of patterned that business model off of that.
Could be. Yeah.
And do that same thing. Those guys are people have their own thoughts about whatever, wherever the instrument comes from or anything. But those Japanese builders, especially those guys, they are top line luthiers. I mean, they are not. These guys painstakingly, the fretwork, the neck work, the inlays.
Yeah, it's not a half a dozen guys in a warehouse on the corner somewhere.
No, it is. Right. It is a very well thought out, very organized, and just very. I mean, just if you ever get a chance, I tell everybody this: if you ever get a chance, just go play. Go to your local music store if you can find an ESP and just play it. Those things are pretty much spot on right out of the box, man. And I mean,
that's cool.
Yeah.
And it's all all the high-end hardware. It's half-inch maple tops. You know, everything is done just like you would get any of the American-made stuff, you know, and they don't slouch, man.
That's cool.
Yeah, they're doing a great job. Actually, now too, like just like maybe it's probably been a year or so. They even have an American, like now they're starting to do ESP USA, which is really interesting too, because they have for people that are, you know, sticklers about that kind of thing.
Yeah.
They can go and they can find these, but it's really the quality is just like what you're talking about with the Japanese guys.
You're just paying American workers.
Super high. Yeah, exactly. So if you like to keep things in the States and, and that's how you roll, which is totally cool, then it's like, hey, and I'm one of those guys. I'm just like anything that's good. I don't almost really care where it comes from. If I'm playing something and it sounds good and it feels good and it works, I go, hey, great, but
yeah, and
different people have different attitudes about it.
Here's something that a lot of people don't know. Ron Wood from the Rolling Stones has an artist model ESP.
I remember him playing ESP back in the day. For
it's
a while.
a Telecaster with a humbucker in the neck.
Yeah.
Nice.
I played one of them. It's killer, and yeah, and from what I've heard, the stories I've heard is that like ESP started out as sort of like these guys that would like had replacement parts and would make you stuff, and then it kind of evolved from there where they just started making guitars, and I think they kind of went through the same process a lot of these other, like maybe that Ibanez and stuff did. They were like doing these killer knockoffs of like these Gibsons and Fenders, and then Gibson and Fender had to come in, and exactly, you know what I mean? And so some of these ESP and Ibanez guys are crazy too, because they're like I gotta find that pre-lawsuit Explorer or whatever,
Yeah,
man.
But it's like that's when the knockoffs were being made better than the American stuff, because we dropped the ball for a few years here,
Oh, let me tell you, you can go out on eBay or even Reverb, and you will see, like, you look up ESP Les Paul, and it is a Les Paul custom with the word with the letters ESP at the headstock. I mean, it is like spot on, but they're using, the tenon runs, way underneath the front pickup, and it's like a 5-piece neck, and it's got a volute on it. It's, like improvements that maybe Gibson should have done on some of their stuff to keep the headstocks from flying off.
Snapping off.
At random. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember people kind of pointing that out to me too. Like, oh, these things, like, that's, you got it's stronger there, Like, they stopped doing them. I'm going, like, I'm a little bit clueless. I'm going, cool. I'm like, all right. It's like, even better, and but I'm just, what I really love too about like the ESP stuff, and because I mean really for the most part, I mean I have my top of the line ESP stuff, but really all the stuff that I use initially, it was like I was like, all right, this is the stuff I use on the road, was all the LTD stuff, because I just thought if it gets broken or stolen or whatever, like, all right, no big deal. It's like, it's not my mega crazy expensive one that, and but it was one of those things where then you're playing it on the road, you're using it all the time. And so I mean I ended up recording the Southern Native CD with all my favorite LTDs, and but it's kind of the same with those. It's sort of like what you're talking about, like all the good stuff, it's got all the good stuff that I like on it. Most of it comes stock that way, but and then anything if you have to, you might slightly change things, but it's like, but it comes stock with, the Seymour Duncans and all this stuff. So I'm like, geez, it's nice and easy and convenient when it's already pretty much where you want it to be, But those were sort of the workhorse guitars that I had, so those were my favorite ones, and I knew how to get the sounds out of them and all that stuff, and so. Those end up being I record all the stuff that I do with them, and I use them on the road, so they end up, my ESPs, my top of the line ones, just, in cases up at the studio, just sitting there because I'm like, ooh, I don't want to get it dirty, or whatever,
Yeah, the other ones are nice and broken
Meanwhile, the
in.
other ones are getting trashed,
Yeah, but they're nice and broken in, they feel like friends.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Here's what I don't understand, okay? And it's got to be because of just the labor costs. That's the only thing it's got to be. Zach Wald has Wald Audio, right? Mm-hmm. Now they're made at the Schecter plant under that they're ghost built by Schecter. They worked out a deal years ago, and that's where Wald Audio is built, right? Mm-hmm. So I was looking at the spec sheet on it, and I'm going, how can they hold this guitar at $1,000? First off, it comes with EMGs, his signature series. It comes with Tone Pros bridges and tailpieces. It's got Grover tuners. It's got an ebony fingerboard and mother of pearl block inlays. All this binding, and it's got 6,100 Dunlop frets and all this crazy add-on. And I'm going
higher end stuff.
And I'm like, how in the world are they selling this guitar for $1,000? It blows my mind how they're able to do that. So obviously, the South Koreans are working for next to nothing, is what I'm thinking. But they're building it's not a bad instrument. I mean, a friend of mine had a Schecter C6, which is their classic 6. This thing had the craziest inlays I've ever seen. And Jeff, I'm telling you, that thing played and sounded as good as my PRS that I had. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that. This thing was built it was like a metric ton. I was like, God, this thing is heavy. It was like the weight of a Les Paul, and it rang for a day. And I was like, wow, and it was loaded with Seymour Duncans, had Tone Pros, it had all the stuff. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, and I said to my buddy, I said, how much you pay for it? He was like, $850. I was like, what? It's just a mind-boggling.
Yeah, it's a labor thing, man. It absolutely has to be a labor thing.
It's crazy.
But I mean, so much of that stuff has gotten so much better over the decades.
Oh, God.
None of that used to be associated with anything of quality at all, given 20, 30 years ago. And now it's like, it's neck and neck with everything is really, really almost on the same plane, except for some real entry level stuff and some real high end stuff. Oh, you pick them up and they're all pretty damn good. It's just like, what do you prefer?
It's not a better time to be a beginning guitar player.
Hell no.
You got YouTube out the ass. You got these high end guitars for next to nothing. Your parents can't bitch about how much you're spending on it. And you know what I mean? It's like, no wonder we got these guys that are playing 800 notes a second, because the guitars are so easy to play.
Guitars are made to do that with now too. So they keep getting better for that style. If that's the kind of style you play, that's the kind of guitar you gravitate towards. Everybody's got their own feel.
Yeah, exactly.
So Tim is ESP and like gear, amps over the years, amps, pedals. What's what do you like?
I like most guys. I mean, for a while, I was, of course, like, I will say out in LA, it was like I had a Marshall Jubilee, like one of those gray Jubilees. It was really pretty awesome. But there's a lot of backline out there. Like, so a lot of times you're just playing on whatever's in the clubs, and, there's all kinds of, there'd be Carvin stuff and Marshall stuff and Boogie, like anything you can imagine, all the typical amps that you could think of, So it's like, you figure out how to kind of play through all of them and figure it out, and
sweet.
And then, but I had that Marshall, which was a pretty amazing amp. I mean, it was kind of, it was, how it is with Marshalls. Like, my experience is like, you just never know what you get with one of them. Like, just one, you're like, I don't know, it's just not working for me. Then you come across that one, like, man, it's amazing, and this was one of the good ones, So, but like, I got rid of that amp when I came back to Florida, and so basically it was like I bought some little cheap little Fender combo that I was like playing around with and stuff. And then things, of course, like really what happened was my tone revolution, was like when I hooked up with Ricky, because that's when, Ricky's the master. He's just, he knows so much about tone, and he's so connected to the tone community, let's say, all these guys and the amps, and and that's how I started playing what I've been using ever since, like Blackfoot, which is the Wizard amps, which he might have been talking about. I don't know if you
no, we didn't
probably
get
heard
there
Ricky talk about Wizard.
No,
we didn't get there.
Oh, okay.
That's cool. Wow.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, who's paying for those?
Let's just say they're on permanent loan.
There you go.
But
Jeff,
let me just say right now, Rick St. Pierre, I love you. You're the greatest. Thank you so much. Rick is one of these guys. He's one of these. He's one of these tone maniacs. You guys should have him on the show actually, because he's got a great story. He's like, like Rick was basically like Angus and Malcolm's like amp tech for like 20 years or something, and I might have some of the details a little wrong, but basically he would make these amps, and then just by himself, and then finally at a certain point, Angus and Malcolm said, man, these amps are great, and they said, here's some money, start up a company and make a company, and then that's how Wizard started. That's the story that I've heard anyways, and it's just him, hand wiring all these amps, kind of based on the classic Marshall kind of, and he's got a lot of different stuff. I'm not the best, spokesman for Wizard, except for what I play and what I do, you know what I mean? So, but I have like a Wizard modern classic, which I think is like, see, this is where you guys will come in handy, because you guys know all this, amp, technical stuff, and I'm not too great with that stuff, but basically I would say like the amp that I have, Ricky has like the vintage classic, which is I think more like almost like the old kind of plexi style.
Yeah, it's a 4 input,
sense.
Jeff. Yep.
It's probably a 4
right,
input.
yeah, it's got the 4 input, exactly, and you jump one to the other, and
right.
Yep.
Exactly. Mine is kind of like the next stage up. It's more like the, I don't know if it's like maybe like the Marshall 800 or
Definitely
900
like
or
that.
something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of more like that, kind of like Van Halen, kind of slightly modded kind of vibe or something,
It's probably it's probably like the early master volume Marshalls. Like they did the JMPs.
Yeah.
Later JMPs had master volumes before they started doing the JCM 800s. So if it's modern classic, it may very well be like the later JMPs or very early 800s.
Yeah, they have.
They're both classics.
I'm on their website, right? So they have the vintage classic, they have the bass 50-100, and then they have the bass 300, which was Malcolm's amp, because Malcolm didn't like having multiple heads. He wanted one 300-watt head powering 6 cabinets, which is ridiculous. And then they have the modern classic 2, and then they have the metal MTL. So that, I bet you how it works, Jeff, is a modern classic is probably like the in-between the 800 and the JMP master volume. Mm-hmm. That modern classic 2 is probably more like the 900, and then the metal is just, full-bore, hot-rodded Marshall, crank it to 20, one of those deals.
Yeah.
What was the thing you told me, Jeff, at the amp show? They were the
the
loudest
Wizard
guys or something.
I'm very familiar with Wizard because we've done amp shows like where in atrium style hotels where all the amp companies each have their own room, play as loud as you want, doors open, whatever, and everybody's really cool with that, and then they turn on a Wizard amp, and like you see everybody closing their doors because you can't hear your amp anymore. I mean, brutal, and I love it. I absolutely love it to death, but it's like, oh shit, he turned it on again.
Well, you know,
those were the 300-watt ones. I guarantee you, those were the 300-watt ones. And it was beautifully brutal.
there is a really, you have to look for it, but on YouTube there's a video of Scott Ian from Anthrax, who is a huge Angus Young fan, below the stage at an AC/DC show, and got permission from whoever, probably Angus or whatever. Angus is not in the video, but Scott is there playing Angus's guitar, and what you see next to him is literally like 9 wizard heads. and it's so loud that you can't, you know, he's talking, but you can't hear him, and he's just putting these captions at the bottom of the screen going, I could die right now and everything would be okay. He goes, here's the classic E chord, you know, and he's just doing all these AC/DC riffs. And very well, by the way. A guy from Anthrax playing all this AC/DC stuff was amazing. But I just remember seeing that rack of wizard heads going, oh my God, that's like $45,000.
Exactly.
You know, just in heads.
You know, they're crazy. You know, they're made really well. I absolutely will say they're you know, you can't find better quality. And you never see anybody in a club using them. I mean, it's only the high-end professionals. I mean, they're built for big stages. They're not built for the small stuff. Tim has risen to the caliber that use Wizard amps now.
There you go.
yeah. Somehow I got lucky, and I kind of snuck in behind Ricky. All right, hey, you know. But
you got an extra one over there, you know?
Yeah, you know. Like, I'll take it any way I can get it. You know what I mean? And
sure.
But I mean, because otherwise, I know But it was one of those things when I was first working with Ricky, you know, actually the very first day that I got together with Ricky, you know, he had I believe it was a 50-watt Wizard with like a little 212 Wizard cabinet that he had. And he just had it in the control room of the studio. And it was like, you know, and he had it like hooked up to like one of his like super old Les Pauls, you know, like from late 50s or whatever it is, you know, I forget, but it was like, you know, and he handed it to me like, here, and I'm like, oh, you know, like what the hell, you know? Like,
I'm not worthy.
You know, yeah, exactly, you know, like you hit one note, bing, you know. But it was like, the tone was like so insane. It was like one of those, you know, it's, you know, like some amps, like there's just this quality, which again, you guys probably know the details of why this stuff happens, but it's like, you know, where you play and like, you know, it's got gain to it, but it's still kind of clean, you know, but it's real super responsive to what you play, you know, almost like when you have a ton of gain, things can be really responsive to how you're playing in certain ways, you know, but like, you know, like that amp and those amps in general, from my experience, is like that, like there's some dirt in there, but it's still kind of clean. So there's some definition, but like it's really responsive to how you play. So you don't have to like, you know, you don't feel like you're like trying to like, you know, just smash every note for it to come out of the amp, you know, and that was real, you know, that was kind of appealing to me because I'm more of a new school player where I like more gain and stuff. And Ricky's like an old school guy. He likes a little less gain, you know. But this was sort of a happy medium because I was like, man, it's got the tone. The gain is there, you know, but it's still kind of clean. But it responds to what you're playing. So, you know, you don't necessarily have to like, you know, crank the overdrive pedal onto it or something. No, not that I won't when I given the chance, but you know.
Now Jeff,
you know, but
sure.
That's.
I was just going to say, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but Jeff,
no.
How can you explain that? Because that is one of the things, like, you know, my Buddha. Of course, if you know, when you want to really know how bad you can play through a Buddha, because it is an amp that tells everything, every little nuance. Sometimes I just like go, I'm just unplugging it, I'm turning it off, I'm going upstairs.
My E's is starting to like that now too, even a little bit more so.
But how do you develop that, Jeff? Like, the Wizard stuff obviously is a very high quality built product, but not just building a product with painstaking. You know what I'm trying to say is like, just because
not just quality, but there's something else.
Yeah, because he's kind of building off of the Marshall quote unquote platform, but Marshalls, like you said, you'd have to go through a whole room full of them to really find that one that had the kind of mojo. But even then, it's not going to do what the Wizard's doing. So what do they do? Is it just the higher quality components or what?
Well, I mean, that does have a lot to do with it. I mean, when it comes to transformers, size matters, and if you have a little bit bigger of a transformer, I think it just responds a little bit better. It has more width, more girth, it allows more to come through, allows the transients to come through, which is where you get your touch sensitivity from. And, and Tim really hit on it too. It's like, turn the gain down, what a lot of these guys are experiencing, is an output section that has enough frequency range and enough power, not that you necessarily are going to use the power, but it will let everything from the front end come through pretty transparently. And that's where, and you get your definition from there. You get note separation, definition, all of that. And you put a good guitar, like he probably had Ricky's 59 burst, playing through this.
Yeah. I believe I think you're exactly right. I knew it was the late 50s, and that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, he mentioned, yes, when we were parting ways, said, "Yeah, I got a 59 burst too." It's okay, thanks, Ricky. Yeah. So it's got the pickups that are really responsive, maybe borderline microphonic a little bit, but that just makes them a lot more fun to play. Mm-hmm. But you scale down the front end gain because so much compression happens there. You should play with the least amount of gain that you need. And maybe it makes it a little bit tougher to play. But that's okay because, that makes you play it a little bit better. But the least amount of gain, the least amount of processing, and the most headroom that you can have in a power amp stage for the particular gig, venue, whatever, your particular application. Okay. Because you want that to be able to breathe a little bit and push the limits of it a little bit in transients and things like that.
So that's where the power tube distortion comes in. You're kind of pushing the back end more than the front end, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, but depending, you don't want to push it too hard because then you start getting into more compression and saturation, which
gotcha.
You lose some of. You lose a little bit of the dynamic. I don't want to say touch sensitivity because you don't lose that, but you lose a little bit of the dynamic.
All right.
So if you have an appropriately large enough power section for a venue, and then a very clean signal path and some good quality stuff, as with regards to the guitar, that's probably where you're going to get your best tone from. Now, is that a metal sound? No, but for stuff that Tim is talking about, mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It lets everything come through, and it just feels damn good to play it too.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
All that technical stuff is, but that's what makes it happen. It's like all that because like I'm so clueless about. Like, I had to ask my tour manager, I'm like, what tubes are in that? And he's like, the EL34s. I'm like, okay, all right. I said, I just don't want to, these guys, I won't even know what's in the amp. These guys are going to be like, what is this guy doing? But it's all that stuff that makes it happen, but yeah, it's funny too, because you talk about that, just pulling that gain back, because, I was, always one of those guys, just get the gain as full blast as possible, but I was just finding that even though it was great in some ways, there was sort of like, it was weird, and you probably know maybe why this is, but it's like, it would almost like it makes you sound more transparent or something. It was like you're going, I know it's still loud, but it's like it's blending in now, and it's not standing out. It's not, so there was something I was losing with it. And, and I kept on going, man, I got to figure that out, and it just wasn't like popping out in the mix as much as you would think it was, even though you got the thing blasted, the gain's all the way up, you got the volume going, and I remember that, a while back we did this show with the guys in Quiet Riot, which I don't know if you know Alex Grossi from Quiet Riot. He's a great guy. He'd be a great guest on here. But, we were playing with those guys, super cool guys, Yeah. And, but it was backline. We were in Chicago, and it was like backline provided, and I had some, they had some Marshall for me. It was probably like an 800 or something. And, and it was one of those ones where it's like, you got the gain all the way up, but it's still not enough. It's like super, super clean, and then you go, well, just roll with it. You know what I mean? And I remember after playing that show, by, the first 3 songs I'm going, man, I got to really put some, I got to, put my elbows into this, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, but by the end of the show, I kind of, you got used to it. You're just playing, you're not thinking about it. And then after that, when I came back, I was, I pulled my gain back on my Wizard, I pulled it back, kind of trying to do the same thing. I was like, I did it, somehow I made it work, the other day, but I had noticed that night, because it was kind of a little bit cleaner, it just stood out more. My tone stood out more. The solos just projected better somehow, and then since then, so I've been doing that. I've been pulling the gain even further back on my amp. So when I'm playing through my own stuff at shows, it's even cleaner, and it's kind of right on the edge where you're like, it's kind of almost too clean. I kind of want to turn it up more, but don't do it. Just keep playing with it like that.
Well,
make it work.
Yeah, look at that. A guitarist with self-restraint. Look at that.
well, think about it though.
You should see me eat, no restraint whatsoever.
Well, I know, we'll go back and do full circle. The song "I Know a Little." If you really listen to that lead guitarist until he goes into the quote unquote solo in that song, and that's where you can hear the compression kick in. And you're probably not hearing it from memory, but I've listened to it this side of 850,000 times. When he's doing all that chicken picking at the beginning, it is very clean. It's a Strat, definitely in the 4th position, and he's just going for it, right? But it's not really distorted. It isn't until halfway through, and it's probably Gary that's playing the solo, that you can hear it's almost like humbuckerish sound. It gets very compressed, and there's a lot more distortion. Those kind of two different things kind of tells you that, there's something changed, something, more gain was added, and obviously that's where the compression thing kicks in. I tell you,
that could be just from guitar changing.
Exactly. The humbucker hitting the amp is breathing,
and the amp is breathing, and the guitar's hitting it harder.
Sure.
And, but there's no mega distortion anywhere through that thing. No. It's just it's a little bit of a beautiful overdrive. That's it.
And I tell you, it does make you a better player. It has to, because if not, everybody knows you'll suck.
That's right.
Exactly. Because I remember Ricky saying to me when we were Rick St. Pierre was going to send us a couple of Wizards, and we were trying to figure out which ones we were getting. And Ricky said, well, I use the Vintage Classic, and he said, that's the kind of amp that, you got to really be a player to, play through that amp, because, just everything you do, it's just, it just shows up it's like being under a microscope. Every little thing, it's like you said with your Buddha or whatever, and he's like, so that's the real player's amp. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I don't want that amp. I want the other amp with all the gain and so I can hide behind all that stuff, you're the real player. I'm not. I'm just just a circus monkey up there jumping around having fun, So.
Oh man, that's too funny.
You just want to keep having as much fun and want to think less. But there's you found the happy medium. I hear you found the happy medium.
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely right, and it's without a doubt, it's from being around Medlock all this time, without a doubt, because I find myself going like, what is wrong? You're looking in the mirror. What's wrong with me? I turned the gain down. I don't understand this. Normally it's like turn it up and but granted, that's sort of my bass sound. I kind of like, everything that I have is kind of sets me up for that. But it's sort of like that old school thing. Like really, I still like. That's the bass sound, and if I turn the volume up and down, it cleans up good. I basically got I got like the JB and the 59, the JB in the bridge and the 59 in the neck, and that's kind of like uniform with all my guitars. That's the basic setup, and and then the volume is just, that's sort of, you roll it way down and it cleans up really nice, and then you get it wide open. And it's, and then you get that gain and the balls come out, and it's, and really it's just, working that knob, all points in between and for every little thing. It's amazing how every little degree with the volume knob is changing what's going on with the sound, and how you got to just figure out those sweet spots for certain things that you're playing and stuff. And, but at the same time, I'll still have, it's kind of crazy. Like I started using this, like you guys will probably laugh, but that's not to say like these products are good. I mean, I use a little zoom pedal that I have and I've used for ages. When I started doing a lot of fly-ins and stuff, I needed some small pedal setup, you know what I mean? And, and some of the guys at Zoom gave me a couple of pedals, and I had this little one. It's I think it's called like a G2U or something. And I started using it for these fly-ins, and then it worked good for me, you know what I mean? So I was like, I just ended up using it no matter what I was doing, but basically I just use it very simple. I just, all the sound, the amp is doing all the work really for the tone, but I just use the pedal to kind of color it with, either a little chorus, delay, wah-wah, or gain. And I sort of use that, the model that's in it is the, the classic yellow Boss overdrive pedal.
Oh yeah.
That's sort of the, that's the model. That's the little one that I use. That's in the Zoom. It's based on that pedal, because it's one of those ones that it doesn't really alter your tone at all. It just kind of gives it some more oomph, and so when I want that extra kick, to get that extra amount of gain that I'm not getting out of the amp because I haven't kind of rolled back, then I can hit that pedal and it, puts me up over the top or whatever. And, so I'm not against using the, an overdrive pedal type of scenario with the amp, but, it's kind of like I can roll the volume way down and it'll clean up super nice. And then you get it wide open. And then when you just want that little extra that you can't get anymore because it's already wide open, you just, you stomp on the, on the overdrive, and then that puts you over the top, and, you get a little extra, sustain and stuff.
For me, that just sounds like the perfect setup. It really does.
Yeah.
It's all analog, it's all organic, and it's just different ways of pushing, a really great basic sound. You don't need any more than that. It's great.
Yeah, simplicity. I mean, that's kind of my thing. Is I'm just one of those guys. I'm like, I can't. I just want very simple stuff, so that so it's easy. Some guys are great. They have a million things, and they can work all that out in their mind. And they, I'm just like, man, I just want to set up, turn the amp on, and just stop playing. You know what I mean? And so that setup is definitely, you know, works great for that kind of thing. You know what I mean? And it's funny because, like, I've sort of found I'm not like a total, you know, I don't know about all the gear and all the stuff that well, but there's certain things that I found out as I went along that I, you know, like, you know, the pots, like most of my guitars I just have it set up so it's just the volume pot and there's no tone, you know. So, but I found that you know, like the pots I like are those Born pots, like the 250K, and they're the linear ones, you know, which I didn't know. I didn't even know that there was. I didn't know about pots. I thought there was just one kind and that was it. But I, you know, as I went along, I found like, oh, this pot is like not very responsive, like, and this one is, you know, and then, you know, it was only through working with like my tour manager and stuff. He's, you know, he knows all, he's like one of these guys, he knows all the stuff. Well, let's get all the pots and we'll try all the different ones, and, you know, and then we figure out, okay, this is what it is, you know, because I was finding that some of the pots, like, you know, you have it off and then you crank it up to about 1 and all of a sudden it sounds like it's on 6 already, you know.
Yeah.
Like it just all of a sudden, boom, you know, and I'm like, why is that, you know? And he's going, well, you know, you want the linear pot because it's a smoother, you know. I'm going, I don't know, but just put it in, you know, and then we listen, like, that's it, you know.
Like, they have different tapers. They have different tapers, and they change resistance at different rates, and that's what you're experiencing.
Okay. See, because you know, because I would go, man, I'm trying to roll it down to the super clean pot, and then it's not enough, and then not enough, and then all of a sudden I turned it off because, you know, it's like, you know, it went from like 6 to 0, you know, like I can't get that, you know, and so thank God there's guys like you that know this stuff to, like, you know, explain it to guys like me, you know, like, try this, you know, and you know, well, but you know,
I tell most guys that don't know a lot of stuff, it's, you know, you don't need to know everything. You just need to know what works for you.
Yeah.
That's it.
And your address, Jeff.
You know.
Right, my address.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Make sure to text me that, please. Thank you.
Right.
Oh, man.
But yeah, you're right. I mean, it's just knowing what works. I mean, like, I know what works for me, and that's just about all I know. But I love, you know, this. That's why, you know, it's great to be able to talk with you guys, because, I mean, this kind of stuff is, you know, all us guitar players, I think there's a certain amount of that, you know, wonderment about, the gear and how does it work and what's, you know, how, you know, why does it work or why does it not work, and, you know, and you know, that's the cool part, you know, like, we can go on forever talking about this kind of stuff because it's just, you know, there's so much to it, you know, and
I think
you know,
I was going to say, I think that's where the simplicity is a good thing, right?
Oh, yeah.
And this is why I saw there was a company that released the other day a new head, and I counted, it only has 23 knobs on the front of it, Jeff.
Oh, wow.
So, you know, hey, it's better than 30 because that's what he usually puts on there. So, anyway.
Well, you know, I mean, like Tim said, we could talk about this all day, but where can we see you and your Wizard? Yeah. Any itinerary coming up? Any tour plans?
Where's his Blackfoot?
You know, I know that we're going back out at the end of the month, and although I don't exactly, you know, because I'm the guy that has no clue what's going on. I just, you know, I just go and play. But
show up, yeah.
I know that we're starting out, but we're going to be getting around. I know we're going to be, you know, we're doing some stuff in Florida right off the bat, and then I know we're supposed to fly out to Colorado, and we're going to be out there, I think, the following month. And but, you know, everyone can look on, you know, blackfootband.com and the dates, you know, get, you know, refreshed up there.
Cool.
That'll live on our website too. That link will be with the show, and that will live in
perpetuity.
That's right.
It means forever.
See, I like perpetuity.
That's right.
And you know, I gotta say, like, you know, before we wrap this up, that, you know, all these, you know, I've been really blessed, like, for all these companies that have, like, supported me and been super cool to me, and you know, a lot of the stuff we're talking about, you know, Wizard and the ESP guys, and Seymour Duncan, and the Dario guys, like that's another like company that's really, you know, been with me and stuck with me through thick and thin. And, I just, and their stuff, I mean, all these guys, I use this stuff, but like if it didn't work for me, I wouldn't use it. It's just like, it's stuff that you use, and then you get lucky enough to like, meet some of these guys that come in contact with some of these people, and you start working together, and you build these great friendships, and, and it's, so a lot of these guys, I go, man, I wouldn't be able to really quite do it the same way without them, and, actually, there's another company that ever since I started doing Blackfoot that, speaking of Andy James, you were talking about Andy before, and he's a big ESP LTD guy and stuff like myself. And he's actually another guy that uses this bridge that I use, which is called this Evertune bridge, which for me is revolutionary. And guys like Andy and people, a lot of guys are starting to use them now. It's kind of,
it's creepy.
So a lot of people are a little bit scared of it, because they're like, I don't understand what's going on there,
Tune your guitar once, and you never have to tune it again.
Exactly, and like I'm telling you, I started using them in the beginning in 2012, and I won't use anything else now. Everyone gives me another guitar, I'm like, tones, like intonations horrible. I'm like, just get this thing away from me, And, I mean, God bless all the guys that don't use them, that's all good. But I tell people all the time, I just sing their praises because I've been touring with them since 2012, and I did the whole Southern Native record, with all my Evertune guitars and stuff, and it's just amazing. It's just, it just keeps you don't have to worry about that aspect of it. All you got to do is worry about, the artistic side of it, just playing and expressing yourself, and
it's a crazy, you can
beat the crap out of it,
Yeah, man. I've seen the demos, and Jeff, it's kind of hard to grasp at first. But it is a very innovative thing, and like I said, you tune the guitar once, and for the life of the strings, you don't have to tune them again. As long as you don't, want to change the pitch, it stays for the life of the string. It's pretty bizarre. Yeah,
wow. And that's exactly it. Like I put a set on, I don't have to until I just change the set again.
Yeah,
and then you put it on, and then even when you change the set, it's pretty close when you put it back, but you just have to fine tune it a little bit, Yeah. But sometimes you don't even have to. You just put it on. You're like, man, it's already there. You just stop playing, but generally you put a new set on, you fine tune it, and it's just, it's hard for some people to kind of go, and I understand, like Ricky has one, but most of the time Ricky, he's, he doesn't have to worry about that stuff. He's always got someone standing right there, hey, let me, keeping everything perfect for him, and but it's like, but even still, he even thinks they're great, but it's like a lot of these guys, and of course you wouldn't take your vintage guitars and like, all right, I'm going to stick an Evertune in here,
It's a big chunk of wood that comes out of the guitar.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
Exactly. It was sort of like, you would hear that dilemma with, like people would be saying, the guy from Journey, like stuck a Floyd Rose in his old Les Paul, like, oh, sacrilege, and you're like, but it's kind of the same thing. Like if that's what you got to do to, but in my experience, it's sort of the same thing. Like I don't, to me, tone, all that stuff, like everything, I don't notice any difference that's making me go, there was nothing about it that, that made me go, is it worth it? It was like, since day one, I was just like, oh man, this thing is a godsend, you know what I mean? And,
that's cool.
You're up in front of, these big audiences. The last thing you want to be doing is tuning and, and having those kind of issues. And, so that's another one of these companies that, has been really super great. And, and I urge people to like, have an open mind and check those guys out. And, a lot of guys, guys in Korn and all these different dudes, like, are discovering it and starting to use it, and but it's sort of new technology, even though it's just rods and springs. There's no weird computer stuff or batteries or anything like that. But it's really cool. So that's something I'm always talking about, that I kind of rant and rave about. I'm like, man, I love these things. Evertunes are amazing. So,
That's
everybody
awesome,
check those out.
Yeah, we'll have to check them out at NAMM, Jeff, when we go there.
Oh yeah, another week or so.
Yeah.
We'll be out there.
Fun times.
Yeah, definitely. Go by the booth. Cosmos, I'm sure, will be over there, and he's the genius that thought that thing up, and they're great guys, And I mean, it's like all these companies that I mentioned. Like, all the guys are just great guys, great people. I've made such good friends through working with these people and these companies, and and it's just another that great side of music and guitar, just bringing people together, and and making friends and making memories and all that good stuff.
It's beautiful.
There you go, man. Well, hopefully we'll get to see all this gear live at some point if you guys get to the Northwest at all. And if and when I get back to Southwest Florida, because that happens occasionally, I'll see if you guys are there, and we'll come out and check you out, man, for sure.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. And if you're close enough, we'll drag you into the studio and fire up some amps and and have some fun in there.
Totally. That'd be awesome. What?
And Medlock will take you fishing, and you'll be like, good Lord, oh. He'll take you out in the swamp,
There you go.
Alligators and all that stuff,
Sounds like a party, man. Sounds like a party. All right, Tim. Well, thank you so very much for being on with us, man. We had a great time, and much continued success. I hope the Blackfoot thing, rocks your world. And if you start touring, safe travels. Have a great rest of the evening, and much continued success, my friend.
Thanks so much, Jeff, Mick. You guys are great. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you.
And I appreciate all that. And we'll be seeing you guys on the road.
I hope so, man. Have a great rest of the evening.
Okay, you guys. Take care.
Take care, Tim. Thanks. And there you have the story.
Yeah, man. How about that, huh?
From Boston to L.A. to Southwest Florida.
The way he was talking, it was like, just decide to go out there. I would crap my pants. I mean, it's like, I'm just going to go out.
Don't know anybody, don't have a gig out there. It's not the first time we've heard that, man.
No.
And it's like, that's commitment. And I'm happy that at least the people that we've spoken to, because we've become aware of them, it worked for them. I mean, he didn't hit it big in LA like some of the guys that we spoke to did, but that was the experience that he needed to take it to Florida and go, I've been there, and now let's do this. And there you are.
How about that, man?
Really cool.
That's a
really
hell of a story too.
For sure. A little traveling. A
little bit. So until next time, my friend.
That's right, because you never know who we're going to bring you next.
That's right. I'm Mick Marcelino.
Yes, you are.
And you're?
Oh, wait, that was my part. I'm Jeff Bober.
And we're always saying,
onward.
Be sure and follow the show on Twitter @AmpsandAxes. Also, make sure you like the show on Facebook. For news, comments, and everything else, visit the webpage ampsandaxescast.com. Thanks for listening.